Hello and welcome to my itty bitty instructional video that's definitely sub 10 minutes on how to speedrun Alien Isolation in the fastest category, any percent CC plus FPS. Now real quick, let's talk about what it means to run CC plus FPS as opposed to something like CC only or NMG. I did a full deep dive into the Alien Isolation speedrunning community in my 47-minute video here, but if you want the short version, stick around. CC stands for crouch clip, and it's a glitch that is performed that allows you to clip through walls by utilizing a fast method of crouching up and down. FPS stands for frames per second and refers to FPS manipulation. This entails setting the game's FPS to a lower value than normal to pull off various tricks in the game. CC plus FPS is the only category to utilize both, whereas CC only allows for the use of a normal crouch clip glitch and not FPS manipulation. We'll be talking solely about CC plus FPS today. Any percent is the normal category that all speedruns have. It's simply complete the game as fast as possible, utilizing any and all glitches and exploits. Of course, this means that you start at the beginning of the game and progress to hit the endgame trigger in the final level. You can't do any category by loading up the penultimate level and going from there. You've got to start from the game's official start. Alien Isolation in particular has a few major glitches that have been designated as allowed and not allowed by the community depending on what category you run, but for any percent all are allowed. There are a few rules regarding hardware, like how everyone is required to cap the frame rate of the game to 275, but this is mostly to prevent the game from behaving too far out of what it was intended to and breaking mid-run. There's also the perspective that some people won't have the best hardware and we want to give all runners their best chance. You do this by going into your NVIDIA control panel. I have an NVIDIA graphics card, so I have the NVIDIA control panel, but if you have a different GPU, you're going to need to find the equivalent, and then change your max FPS for the Alien Isolation.exe program to 275. Make sure you do this before you run any category, as it's a hard and fast rule for every single one. While I'm not going to go through all the possible ways you can complete the game in CCFPS, which is also known as all glitches, I intend to outline everything you'll need to know to run it and replicate the most recent world record run as of writing this video. If you're wondering why I'm qualified to talk about it, I currently hold the number 2 spot on this leaderboard and the number 1 spot on the Nightmare category. I will say though that my record can be easily beaten as I don't have much time to practice and I did kind of get lucky with it. Most of my time save was due to a new skip that I found after making a speedrun documentary about the Alien Isolation community. Downloads. First thing you're going to want to do is make a folder specifically for Alien Isolation speedrunning apps and save files. I keep mine in documents, but you can easily keep it somewhere like desktop. I would put a shortcut to the base game install folder as well as these other things you're going to need to download. I've included the list in the description, but most of them are in the resources tab on the Alien Isolation speedrun leaderboard. You're going to want to get Rivatuner Statistics Server, Bandicam, Livesplit, and STEVE.exe. There's an autosplitter created by GlorpVT in the resources tab you'll need. I also use OBS to record the game, but you can use any other software. And make sure you do the 275 frame cap. Alien Isolation settings. I'd recommend no motion blur, so if you downloaded Alien Isolation or some other cinematic tools that require motion blur or chromatic aberration to be on, I'd at least turn them off as long as you're practicing and running CC plus FPS, because it can create visual blurs and artifacts at low FPS that are difficult to see around. One problem that I ran into that was a biggish deal for me was that a certain glitch wouldn't work because my FPS was locked to my monitor's frame rate. So you're going to want to change VSync to off. If you have the Mother VR mod, make sure that the game doesn't launch with it active. You can do that by typing -novr in the Steam commands line, depending on what version you use, or by removing those files from your game folder for speedrunning. Make sure that you launch Livesplit before Alien Isolation in admin mode. You can go to Properties/Compatibility and check Run this program as administrator, so it always launches in admin mode. I would recommend doing this with Alien Isolation as well to prevent any other issue with priority access in the PC backend. You'll have the window pop up and ask if you want to run the program every time, but it's really not that big a deal once you get used to it. Livesplit setup is a bit more complicated, and I'll go through it here for you. Skip to this timestamp to start working on FPS manipulation software if you already have this set up. Caraxx has created a great video on this, as well as M1 that I've linked below, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Just make sure to watch the beginning of my Mission 1 tutorial to hear about the door crouch clip. Apart from that, Mission 1 is practically the exact same as any other run, simply because there aren't that many skips we can do in it yet. For Livesplit setup, you're going to download and install it, then download the layout file, the split files, and the autosplitter file, and put them in a trusted folder. Mine are in Documents /Alien Isolation /Livesplit. Then, in Livesplit, right-click, then Open Splits, then From File, and select the splits file. Then the same for the layout file. Then edit Layout, and click Layout Settings, Scriptable Autosplitter, and make sure that the script path goes to the right folder. Then select Campaign, then any percent CC plus FPS. You can change the cosmetic portion of the Livesplit app to look however you want. Just make sure that the timers and layout settings are set so one says real time and the other says game time. FPS manip. For Rivatuner and Bandicam, you're going to want to download, install, and follow this guide for how to set up hotkeys and FPS limits. For Bandicam, it's going to open in the default mode for the first time, so you're going to want to click the game controller icon that says Game Recording, and then navigate to the FPS tab. I have the FPS overlay turned on for recording's sake because for CC+FPS it's important that we can see what FPS you're changing to, and that the value doesn't exceed 275 for the run to be valid. There's another FPS overlay on Rivatuner, and I have them both active just in case one turns off for some reason. Change the hotkey at the bottom here to something plus shift because you're going to be changing this value while running most of the time, and it's easy to access. I have it set to shift plus the side button on my mouse labeled button 1. Swayze has his bound to shift plus his middle mouse button. For Bandicam, I use 10 FPS because it's the solid middle value FPS change that works for most skips. So in your mind, you're going to want to cement that this hotkey equals 10 FPS all the time. Through practice, you'll remember this, but it's good to remind yourself. You could also make a habit of checking Bandicam every time you open it that this value is set up. It should autosave, but it's worth checking. And make sure it's open before you open Alien Isolation, or it'll crash the game when you run it. OBS can also crash, so if you're using it to stream or record runs, I would check on it as well. Now, Rivatuner is a bit more complicated, and if you want to just try running with the 1 FPS changer, you can. Just change the FPS value in Bandicam to 6 or 7, whichever one you decide you want. All of the skips can be performed on those values, just a tad bit slower. Skip to this timecode if you don't want to set up Rivatuner. For Rivatuner, I would make sure this opens in admin mode as well, so it has the permissions to change the Alien Isolation program. Open it up and you're going to hit the green add button on the bottom left, then add the AI.exe file from the game folder to your directory. Then click AI.exe in the black box, then click the blue setup button. Then you'll navigate to plugins and click hotkeyhandler.dll and setup on the bottom. This will pull up all of the options for hotkeys, but for the most part, we're looking for anything that says frame rate and in the Profiles tab. Under Frame Rate Limiter, change the Toggle Frame Rate Limiter to another easy-to-press hotkey. Swayze and I both use Shift plus B. Then go down to Profiles. You can change the FPS values on the left by clicking the ellipses next to the hotkey values. I have mine set to 6, 7, 5, and 25 FPS with the number keys 0, 1, 2, and 3. This makes it so that when I tap the num keys, it'll change the FPS value whenever I hit Shift and B. Something important to keep in mind when you're running is you may have to hit the change hotkey, whatever it is, multiple times without touching something else. So we usually hit that in a loading screen or when we're standing still for a moment. Also, feel free to try different FPS values during your runs and experiment. Feel out what works and what doesn't work for you. STEVE.exe. Now let's look at STEVE.exe. You're going to want to make sure this opens in admin mode too. This is a program designed by the speedrunners to change some of the files inside the AI game folder without having to manually go in and change all kinds of things, so it needs to be able to do what it needs to for you. You're going to want to go to the top right where the green folder button is and make sure that opens your remote folder inside the game files. Then, under that, hit the gear button and this will take you to the input file. This is where you can change game bindings because AI doesn't let you change all of the button mapping from the game itself. For CC and CC+FPS, we usually bind the mouse wheel to crouch. This is to perform the crouch clipping glitch. You don't need to bind it for any %CC+FPS, and I would honestly just keep it bound to the use key so you can quickly select prompts. This means that when you scroll the mouse wheel, it'll be like you're tapping E very fast. It's also important to bind spacebar to crouch for any %. If you don't have it bound to space, you won't be able to perform most of the glitch tricks in the run. I will include my input file in the description so you can download and replace yours if you prefer to do that, but I would make sure yours is backed up first before doing that. Next, go to the conversation box under those settings and it'll open the subtitle and language settings. We need to change it so that the audio language is Italian, and you can turn the subtitles to whatever language you use natively. We change this so that the unskippable dialogue scenes in Mission 1 go as fast as possible, and Italian is the fastest language for them. Make sure to open Steam after this and right-click the game, then Properties to make sure that the language says Italiano. I would also check the Disable Intro Movies checkbox in the bottom left of STEVE.exe as well, as it makes booting up the game so much faster. So with all those settings changed, make sure that you open Livesplit, then Bandicam, then Rivatuner, and all of your recording software before you launch the game. Then you're going to navigate to Play Game, Alien Isolation, Start Game, and then you'll choose your difficulty for the category you're running, hit Yes, Enter, and Start. We skip both the cutscenes by holding space, then the game starts. If your timer doesn't start by the time Ripley is getting out of her hibernation pod, you should restart your game and make sure Livesplit was open first and in admin mode. Caraxx mentions in the tutorial that I mentioned before that you must exit out of the game after every attempt, but for CC+FPS it's not that big of a deal. Just make sure you quit the game completely after 5 or so runs so that you don't get any memory corruption glitches. Also, Caraxx spoke about when and when not to loot. Don't worry about any of that for CC+FPS, as we're not picking up anything or using any items, so the only things you'll need to interact with are the mission-critical buttons and levers. If you want an explanation of all the tricks we use in this run, you can either skip to this timecode or pause now to see all of the explanations written out. For brevity's sake, I'm going to refrain from explaining each trick in excessive detail so that you get a general feeling for the run first. Most of the tricks are difficult and will require multiple runs to practice them. Mission 1. Now, welcome to Mission 1. As of now, this mission has a very small number of skips, and it's the only mission we haven't completely broken as far as any percent is concerned. I've been actively looking for a skip that allows us to go through some of the other doors and skip the majority of the mission, but it's practically airtight. Maybe you can find the exploit. Luckily, the first thing we can do in this mission is a skip. We're going to ignore the prompt that tells us to sign in, then crouch before this doorway to get pre-crouch state. Without it, we can't crouch clip at all, and then do the very first glitch of the run, a frame manipulation CC. It used to be that the way to manipulate your frame rate to crouch clip through a door was to toggle resolution, and that took a lot longer and required you to go into the menu and change the resolution, clip, and then change the resolution back. Thankfully, we only use Bandicam or another FPS changer now, and that saves us an immense amount of time. After we have crouched for a moment, we're going to stand while activating our frame manipulation software. In this case, I've used Rivatuner in the 6 FPS setting, and pressing space multiple times. Zeb says he can do it just by pressing once, but I haven't practiced this enough to do that yet. The goal is to go diagonally upward through the door and get it first try, but if it takes you 3 to 5 space taps, you're still on pace for a decent M1. Just practice this a bunch until you're able to consistently get out around the 29-second mark. Anytime after 29 seconds on the timer is the same as if you had just signed in on the wall panel. We go to the side room to get dressed, and like some other sections of the game, you can start moving backward before your vision fades back in. We make our way to Samuel's, the synthetic in the med bay, walk to his room, back out, then align ourselves close to this curved section on the floor. There's a trigger here that we need to step on, but only after Samuel's flinches. This will skip all of his dialogue except the last line. If he says anything more than "Ah, Ripley," you've either not gone far enough back into the hall or too far forward and hit the trigger. You'll have to restart. Once he flinches and you hit the trigger, he'll go on a spiel wondering if we've seen Taylor, and as soon as he finishes saying "Turbata," we can cross over the other boundary.
Turbata.
If Ripley doesn't say "No lo vista," then we've messed it up and have to restart. Then we make our way to Taylor, who's in the mess hall. Her dialogue triggers can be a bit more temperamental, but we make do. We pass over the boundary, which is just past this rounded section on the floor, then go back out, stand past the section on the floor for 2 to 3 seconds, then walk back in and wait next to the trigger until the door begins to close. Then we walk to it, and then immediately back across the trigger on the floor. If she says, "Sorry, I feel like death," you did it too fast and we'll have to restart. If you prefer, as soon as you hit the trigger the first time, you can walk down past the tools on the floor and then back, and enough time will have passed to activate the end line of her dialogue. We then wait in the doorway without crossing until her line finishes, and the mission updated animation begins at the top of the screen. The next part is a bit more of a habit, but we walk down the hall to make sure Samuels is coming. Sometimes he glitches out being an android at all. After the objective updates, it takes about 7 to 8 seconds for Samuels to warp to his spot in the corridor. Sometimes the game bugs and delays this process, and this is what that looks like.
There we go.
Then after that, it can take anywhere from 0.1 seconds to over 2 for him to actually start moving after teleporting. This is what we call Samuel's RNG, and there's no known way to predict or manipulate this to our knowledge. We want to open these doors ahead of him on the way to the cockpit so he doesn't waste time opening them himself. The next part is dependent on how fast he gets to his location. Once he gets into position, we have to wait for their conversation to play out until Samuel says, "Does everyone have their briefing documents?" We typically flip this notebook up in Connor's face for good luck, then go stand by Captain Verlaine until the line is said by Samuels. For some reason, if you hit the document prompts too fast, or maybe I'm too slow, I'm not sure, it'll pop up a required content is not available dialog box, and you'll lose a second closing it. So I like to have my hand on enter just in case it does it to me, which it did in my silver run. Immediately after the screen fades, hit and hold space to skip the cutscene and move on to mission 2. Swayze says you can hold space and scroll before the screen fades to skip the cutscene perfectly without timing it. It's worked for me every time so far. There are a few other ways to do Mission 1, and my most recent method, which seems to teleport Samuels to the cockpit every time, is skip getting dressed, go to Taylor, then Samuels, then get dressed. By the time I've reached the cockpit, Samuels has already been teleported there and is waiting. Try it if you want. I consistently get around 3:24 using this method. Swayze's time on Mission 1 in his world record run is 3:20.42, but I frequently get 3:24 or even 3:28. The individual level run record is 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Don't worry if it's more than that, you'll get the hang of it. If you don't move past Mission 1 in your practice runs, you'll never get practice on the rest of the run. Mission 2. Here's where it gets deviy, by which I mean deviates from the norm. As soon as you get up, you're going to wait for the door to open, face to the left, and hit this prompt on the spacesuit storage to put your suit away. This is one of those prompts you should use scroll wheel to hit, as you'll immediately get it as long as your selection zone so much as passes over the prompt. As soon as you hear a little click from the flashlight, you can turn and run with the screen still black. This took me a long time to get right, but you're essentially going to want to turn to the right, hit Shift and W and D to get to that door behind you. If you get the door to start opening while the screen is still black, that's another time save, baby. You're going to run down this hall to the main run-ending skip called Gas Skip. I would recommend if you're looking to just practice, you can hit the save station to the left before coming down this way. What we're going to do is come over to where the fire is, pre-crouch because we're in a new level, then activate our frame manipulation. I use 10 FPS here, so that's my Bandicam bindings. I spent so much time trying to figure out the different routes over gas, but be prepared to fall or get stuck in your practice. It'll happen and it's all part of figuring it out. You can get super discouraged watching world record runs and seeing us get them first try. Just remember it takes 5 to 6 runs before we get across gas skip, sometimes out of pure luck. Swayze does this faster than me by pressing W and D and tapping space to get across directly toward this pipe next to the caution cone on the far side, but there is a way to get across by going as far right as you can, though with a lower success rate. My method is to go straight ahead off of this corner, facing between the fire and this joint in the pipes for about 8 to 10 taps of spacebar, until I cross a certain threshold. Then I press W and D and continue toward that same pipe. This has been relatively consistent, with approximately a 70-40 chance of making it across. I've seen Swayze and a few others go straight across, but I haven't been able to make it work for myself, as you need to gain height during your crossing. The reason that this is so iffy is that there are some invisible walls we're clipping through and around. They can just barely move our position if we hit them at the wrong angle. I've tried to locate some kind of way to see these invisible walls for research and practice, and not to use during the run, but I haven't found a way to do that yet. As of now, making your way to this pipe on the far side and popping onto it by moving forward and right while tapping space is the best bet for a consistent skip. If you want to go beast mode, keep trying to go across by directly going right and hopping up on this ledge. It's hard, but it's possible, and most of the time you can recover and go up on the pipe. If you're running this in all missions instead of any percent, I would wholly recommend either going around through the vent as designed, or by using my method to consistently get across. If you mess up, you're usually right above that pipe with collision and can pop up again if you're fast enough. Gas skip saves around 13 to 14 seconds, so you're better off getting your practice in, even if you're just running all missions. Once you're over gas skip, our third hardest skip comes up, baggage skip. This saves upwards of 16 seconds. I pre-crouch it out of habit, which isn't necessary unless you took the vent instead of performing gas skip, but the goal is to get through this door and perch on a tiny ledge just past it. If you go too far, you'll plunge into the abyss until you hit the center on cell boundary at the bottom of the map zone and reset to just inside the door. The fall takes about 5 seconds and it's a pretty big time loss, so I would recommend practicing this in gas skip more than anything else in the run. You're going to hit frame manipulation, 10 FPS, and tap space a few times to get through. Then immediately stop and don't move apart from turning off frame manip until your character stops moving. The ledge on the other side of the door slopes down on either side of the door, so you're going to want to clip through closest to those sloped edges as possible. As soon as you stop moving, press your frame manipulation again, then immediately press shift right and forward, in that order, to fly around and drop to a lower section of the map. Be careful to clear the main area you launched from, then as soon as you're under the top part and over the bottom part, you can untoggle FPS manipulation and land on that roof. Next, you can run over this area or fly over the gap. Then make your way to this part, fly again around this part, and land on the roof over here. Sometimes while flying over this little gap, you can get a bevel launch up and fly over to this other roof. I'm not sure if it's faster than not being launched, but it can happen, and it appears to be about the same time. You're going to make your way around the back of the ladder, then aim to the top. Then scroll to grab it and hop on. The game thinks you're wanting to go back down the ladder from this prompt, so you'll want to hold W to go back up, and voila, you're back in bounds. Run through this door, and then we're going to CC through 4 doors to go to M18. Activate frame manipulation right before you touch it, and you should only have to tap space 2 to 3 times to get through each door. This also takes practice, and practicing this section will make the first part of baggage skip easier for you. You'll figure out the rhythm, but it's a 1, 2, 3, like this. The route here in Terminal hugs as far right as you can, and we have to go around this little corner, but other than that, it's a straight shot to the far side of the room. Now, the M18 elevator is a bit harder, and the usual practice is to CC through the right side, but I tend to get stuck more on that side, so I go left. You're going to want to face right instead of left for this one, so you can quickly hit the elevator button on the right side and go to Mission 18. Mission 18. You're now 2/3 through the run. Final stretch, take a deep breath. When you get to Mission 18, the game expects you to have completed all previous mission objectives up to this point, meaning that the Mission 18 objectives will start regardless of previous objective progression. This is how we're able to skip to the end of the game instead of having to do everything else first. It's important because we can only progress to Mission 19 once the minimum objectives are met for Mission 18. Since the mission objectives start once you go down the elevator, any percent is just a race to the Mission 18 elevator and then to the end of the game. If you wanted to use 7 FPS for the Bevel Launch, which you can decide on here in a second, I would hit your hotkey for this while you're in the load screen to go to Mission 18. I use 6, but Swayze uses 7, and he's right that it's technically faster, but the timing for the bevel is different, and I haven't fully trained myself to do it at 7 yet. Using 7 FPS, you can move around much more while gaining height from a bevel, and still maintain your upward velocity. You can't do the same with 6 or 5. The more you move, the less you gain height. However, it's much easier to gain a lot more height using 5 or 6 FPS over 7. This is one of the loading screens that you can begin running before the screen totally fades in, so begin running as soon as the second loading screen stops. We run out and to the right, pre-crouch right before the stairs because we're in a new level again, then fly around this banister with 10 FPS or an even higher value if you really want to get up onto this ledge. Now, this is what we call the Bevel Launch of the century. We're going to position ourselves behind this line, close but not too close to the ledge, activate our frame manip, then tap left, wait half a moment, then right, and this will pop us up in the air. After a bunch of practice, you'll get the rhythm of this down, just like you will with crouch clipping. There are a few easier spots to practice on that I will highlight at the end of the run explanation. After we pop up, we immediately hit left until we're aligned with about the middle of this grate on the floor, though we're technically behind it, and go up through this tiny hole in the ceiling. If you're wondering, this is what we're going through. This texture doesn't have collision, and we're able to pop right through it. Turn off FPS manipulation for a moment, then reactivate it at the apex of your launch. If you did the bevel correctly, you'll have enough height to turn and fly to the top of the maintenance walkway outside of the station. I would recommend re-enabling FPS manip to a higher value like 10 or 25 so you fly to the maintenance walkway faster than you would with 6 or 7. You can turn off FPS manip as soon as you're over the railing on the near side to land on the floor. There's a possibility you'll hit a ceiling from the floor above as soon as you do the bevel launch and get popped down onto the roof of the first floor. Trust me, it happens to the best of us. There's a few backup launch locations I use over here, and one of them is on these lockers, and I use that for my second place run. If you just want to practice the next trick, bullet tram, you can land on the lower section and go up the elevator to get an autosave. The bevel launch is the second most difficult part in my opinion, and you're going to want to watch a bunch of runs to find the right positioning and practice this like your life depends on it. If you watched my speedrunning documentary video, you may be thinking that the world record in that video was longer than the video I'm showing here. This is because there's been a time-saved discovery on my part since then. After finishing my video, I continued to mess around with bevel launching and managed to figure out that if we skip a save trigger here at the end of mission 18, we can skip the in-engine cutscene and get to the final mission 30 seconds faster. I originally performed this trick by calling it long jump and using the fly technique to make it all the way over to the steps past the tram, but it took way too long to do this, and because I wasn't sure what I was skipping to cancel the cutscene, I thought this was the only way. Me and Swayze messed with it some more and realized we can ride the tram from a spot higher up on it, then fly around the save trigger at the end of the tram to the steps, and we will get the same result. As of now, this is the fastest way to do it. So to perform the bullet tram trick, you're going to run up to the tram as you normally would and hit the button. As soon as you hit it, activate frame manip, I'm using 6 FPS, and crouch clip through the doors that just closed behind you. Once you're through, deactivate and align yourself next to the edge where the tram just left, then bevel launch off of it. As with the previous launch, deactivate your lower FPS and activate your higher value one to fly over to the tram. You're going to want to land on the higher section of it on the left side. It's tricky to get lined up, so practice landing on it from a lower elevation or even waiting to cancel your FPS manipulation until you land. Remember, you're landing on a moving target. Wait and ride this tram until right before it hits the end, then activate 10 FPS again, hold Shift, W, and A and fly around this main platform until you're just past this second row of floor lights. The trigger box seems to extend to about here. Then deactivate the frame manipulation and book it up the stairs. You can run to either side, but I prefer left. Pull the handcrank, grab the keycard, and insert it, then run up and do the same on the other side. As of now, we believe it takes the same amount of time to run up to either one first, but no one has timed it yet. Then we're going to go up and wait for the blast pins to rise out of the floor. As soon as the prompt appears, select it. For this whole past section, I recommend using the scroll wheel to select things. Now you're going to try for what we call double pins, which is consistent and just takes practice. Missing this costs about 15 seconds. This allows 2 pins to be done at the same time instead of taking twice as long to individually raise all 4. You're going to hover over one side, tap E, then move over to the other side quickly and hit E again. You'll know if you got this if the first one is no longer glowing and the shadow rises up at the same time as the one you're currently on. Do the same for the lower 2 and get ready to hit space to skip the cutscene after the one that Bullet Tram skipped. Mission 19. Mission 19 is pretty straightforward. Once we load into Mission 19, we can press forward ASAP. Most runners do it as soon as the loading icon disappears. There's a 50-50 chance we get fast walk here instead of walking the slowest you can ever walk. You will just get normal speed, which saves a good amount of time. There's a superstition that if we get a frame perfect W plus shift press here that it makes fast walk possible, but it's never been proven. We walk or fast walk up, tap this button to get a jump scare, hold or mash back left and right over and over, and then interact to finish the game. If Livesplit worked properly, the timer should automatically stop, and that's the run. Please leave a comment with any questions or join the Alien Speedrunners Discord at the link below. There's a bunch of us willing to help with anything you're stuck on. There are also some other specific tutorials by me, Zeb, and Swayze linked in the description. Now, I'll take a minute to explain all the glitches we're using in the any percent run. Thanks for watching, and good luck. Glitch explanations. Dialogue skip. By activating and neglecting to activate at certain times, we can manipulate the script of the dialogue to trigger the last line of the dialogue early. This is used primarily in Mission 1. Crouch clipping. Crouch clipping has been used in Alien Isolation since 2016. Essentially, when you're near a thin wall or door, you can clip your way through by spamming the crouch button and moving into the wall or door. The reason this works is the game attempts to displace your movement if you get stuck and will pop you through to the other side of the impassable object. We pre-crouch when we get to a new level to make our character geometry smaller and fit better through the small spaces. It's made easier by manipulating FPS to slow time and increase the time that you're applying an input to the area in question. Bevel Launch. Bevel launching works by standing on top of something. Remember that you can't jump in AI, so you need to fly with FPS or drop down from somewhere high. Toggling FPS, falling off the side of the rail or platform slightly, then move back onto the platform. The game seems to interpret this movement as attempting to go up a step and tries to pop you up onto the platform. This feature seems to be designed to keep you from falling through the map if you encounter a hole in the floor, but with FPS manipulation you can stack the effect and get launched up high in the air. This is usually used to get on top of the map, as some of the ceilings don't have collision and you're able to pass right through them from below. This can be used on invisible platforms out of bounds as well. In fact, I recommend practicing this either on the middle of baggage skip, or you can find somewhere else pretty easily, like here in Spaceflight Terminal. I've been trying to use it to skip N1, but I haven't been able to find a hole in the ceiling to pop through in the area that you can bevel in. Fly. By changing the FPS value, you can decrease the gravity force on your character and move in the air further than normal. This is used to go from a higher position on the map to another easily, and can be used anywhere, including out of bounds. The speed that you fall is dependent on your FPS value. Lower FPS equals slower fall speed. If you want to see some other tutorials on how to do the skips, I've linked to both mine and a few other runners in the video's description. Submitting to Speedrun.com. Once you've finished a run that you're proud of, I would recommend uploading it to YouTube. Not only has there been a new policy with Twitch where some VODs are deleted after a certain amount of time, but it'll be easier for the run verifiers to verify your run. I would recommend putting your run somewhere where you know it won't be deleted offline or online, even if you did stream it on Twitch. Trim your video file using a program like Lossless Cut or another video editor of your choosing, upload it to YouTube, then go to the speedrun.com page. Once you hit Submit Run, you'll be greeted with this page. Select Full Game, any percent, then the difficulty you ran the game at, then CC+FPS. Refer to your Livesplit timer for the load remove time, which will be your game time timer, and real-time attack, which will be your real-time timer. If you don't see real-time or forgot to set one of your timers to real-time, you can see it inside of the Edit Splits portion of your Livesplit. Paste the URL for your video into the box below that, then select the date you ran the game. Please be accurate with this and don't set the year to 2016 or something to be funny. What platform you ran on. For CC+FPS it's going to be PC, and then write a description with any notes you want to make. Then hit Submit and wait for a mod to approve it. Most of the verifiers work full-time jobs and do their best to make sure all the runs get verified, so please be patient. Come hang out with us in the Discord until then. Feel free to post a screenshot of your Livesplit time in the general channel, and happy running. Thanks so much to Zeb and Swayze for helping me with the script of this video, it means a lot. While you're choosing another video, obviously the usual like and subscribe would be dope, but I thought I'd tell a funny story. While working on this video, I wrote down that you can change the FOV to a higher value by downloading this little thing from the speedrun.com resources page, but it turns out that using that makes your run invalid, so my previous runs had to be taken off the board. I got them back up there because I'm just that cool, but it was a real bummer and a half. Anyway, have a great day and keep your chin up. Practice can be tough. Later.